All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the kind of planning and design portion of this 50 by 60 hangar home. So we're going to talk about the size building that we're going with, the considerations that we have, and kind of the overall layout that we decided to do. So the very first thing that we did was kind of define the size of the building. So we went with a 50 by 60 metal building, which is a 3,000 square foot metal building. So if you cut it in half, you have 1,500 square foot for the living space, 1,500 square foot for the hangar side. Now, that's not as big as we would have liked to go, but we went with the 50 by 60 primarily for cost reasons. We had talked to several builders before we decided to do finish out the inside ourselves. We talked to several builders about doing a turnkey barndominium, and for something similarly sized, 50 by 60, we are getting quotes anywhere from $350,000 to $400,000 to do the entire barndominium, built out, turnkey, completely finished. Now, as we talked about in the last episode, our budget for this build was $300,000 total, and we had already spent $40,000 on the lot. So that only left us $260,000 to finish out, or to build the house, the metal building and everything on the lot. So this $350,000 to $400,000 quote we were getting would put us more than $100,000 over our budget. So that was out of the realm of possibility, which is why we ended up going with the idea of me doing as much of the work myself as possible. That also, that cost is why we have reduced the size down to as small as we thought we would be comfortable living in, and that's a 1,500 square foot house with a 1,500 square foot hangar. And that 30-foot width for the hangar becomes important too. So I looked at a table of a bunch of commercially available small planes. For our building, a 50-foot wide building, we are going to put a 42-foot wide hangar door. And for a list of planes that would fit in a 42-foot wingspan, the 30-foot depth is big enough for most planes. But we didn't want to get any shorter than 30 foot on the hangar side, or for resale value, the hangar is no longer usable for most people that want to put planes into the hangar. So we had to keep that 30 feet at a minimum for the hangar side. So what you see here in front of you is kind of our basic building restrictions. So we have a 50 by 60 metal building, and inside in red is essentially the exterior walls as I will frame them up inside the building. Talking to the builder and seeing the designs for the metal building, we need to offset the building, the walls 8 inches from the exterior walls, because that's the depth of the girts. These kind of cartoons of the main columns are not actually to size. They're just there to kind of help you visualize what the overall shape of the building is going to be. But we can get up to 8 inches from the exterior walls where there are just girts that run in between these two columns. Now, where these columns are on the wall, I'll end up having to box around them with the framing, and we'll have to frame in and sheetrock a box so to kind of hide that column. I don't show that on any of the plans, but I understand I won't know exactly how big I have to make that box till I'm actually framing in the house, and I can see how far that column is in past my studs, my exterior studs, as I run them around the outside of that wall. But anyways, this is the starting point for where we came up with floor plans. Everything had to fit within this red box for us to have a house. So from here, I'm going to kind of roll through some of the floor plans. I want you to know that the first floor plans I'm going to show you, and I'm going to buzz through them pretty quick, look nothing like the finalized floor plan that we chose. We went through probably 20 different iterations of floor plans off very wildly different concepts that evolved as we figured out what we wanted and what we could and what we could not do. So there's a lot of restrictions as far as what I can build, and then there are restrictions for what we wanted out of our house. So I'll walk you through what we did, and I'll show you what we came up with. Well, all right, so this was our first attempt at a floor plan. We moved on to our next iteration of this. You can see that all of a sudden the living space has shrunk considerably in order to get this down to a 16-foot span. That was the goal, to keep everything, have no span of any joists for the second floor be more than 16 feet. Here you can see we finally started trying to visualize what it would look like with these main columns. So we were fairly certain that this was the layout we were going to go with for a long period of time. We had this and we were happy with it. We thought this was going to be the layout, right? We really were happy with the whole master suite, the walk-through bathroom into the closet with utility room back here. We thought this was going to be it. Until at one point we went into our backyard with a 100-foot measuring tape and some spray paint and some flags, and I actually drew this floor plan out in the lawn in our backyard and let my wife walk through the house. And we came to find that the living space and kitchen was not big enough. There was not enough room to have both the living room, dining room, kitchen all in this just central third of the house. So that's something that we learned from doing this that I would like to pass on to people that are doing their own floor plans, is that you have other options to visualize it out there, and it's real easy if you sit here and draw it on a computer to not have a good sense of what this scale is. Going into a park with some flags, or going out in your backyard and actually laying out the floor plan in a large flat place and walking through it really helps you visualize how big the house is going to be. So we were 100% for probably a week that this was the floor plan. We were going to do this, and then we actually laid it out on the ground and decided it wasn't big enough. We decided to try and expand the living space. And how did we do that? We dropped a bedroom. So same sort of thing, walk into a foyer, this is all living space, dining room, and now around the corner you have a kitchen. Way to go. So trying out putting a kitchen here, having a dining room here, this full kind of U-shaped kitchen, which we actually really like the layout of this kitchen with an island in the middle, and we have continued to keep this kitchen layout, just used it in a different setting. So then we decided to try and just enter into the living area so that we could have, this bedroom here, have a kind of cutout. My wife wants kind of a built-in desk, study nook, office area somewhere in the house. So we were doing something like that here, and kept this kind of master suite all the same as it had been, keeping this kind of U laid out kitchen. And then finally we had a big brain flash, and we decided, well, why do we got to enter from the end wall of the house? If we enter from the side wall of the house, we can cut the house in half essentially and have something that's less than 16 feet spanning this way and less than 16 feet spanning this way. It's real easy to run floor joists for the second floor. They just go all the way across. We can have this entire area be living room with the kitchen in the back, and then we just got to carve up this area to be 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Another attempt that we had with this kind of long skinny layout, you walking into a large living room and having a hallway and trying to access kitchens, bedrooms, bathrooms. This ended up not working out. You lose too much square footage dedicated to a hallway, that it wasn't an efficient use of the space. This layout was our first attempt at kind of carving this half up, kind of refined that idea a little bit. We moved the bedrooms down here on either side so they could share a hallway and save some space there. Changed our mind for a little bit, went back to the old way of entering in the end wall, cutting in cutting in the kitchen here off the living room. So we tried to tweak this a little bit more to make sure that entering from this way was what we wanted to do, or if entering from this way is what we wanted to do. The one thing I did like about this layout was you have some separation between the bedrooms so that you don't interfere with each other if you have people coming over. It is just me and my wife. We don't have kids, so this bedroom would end up being her office most of the time because I have this office here. But I did like that. We really started tweaking this, and we're getting a lot closer here to where we ended up finally landing. Living space, dining room area all the way up through here, and you have your full kitchen in the back, U-shaped counters all the way around, island in the middle. You have kind of a shared hallway where you go into a guest bedroom, master bedroom, and for a long time we thought this was it. This was exactly how it was going to be, 100%. I drew up plumbing diagrams, framing diagrams. I sent plumbing diagrams to the builder, and the last thing we did, we made a couple little tweaks like you always will. So what we did, the only major change we did is we made the walk-in closet on the other side of the master bathroom smaller, and we added a closet here to have a separate his and her closet and to give some separation from the master bedroom and the guest bathroom. So that was the only real change. Since then, only minor changes have been made to this layout. We've mirrored this bathroom so that the vanity and toilet and bathtub all drain on this side, and we did that for HVAC reasons. We'll talk about the HVAC here in a second, but this is essentially the layout that we have landed on. Okay, so I know I burned through those pretty quick, but you got to realize that as I was making all those floor plans, you constantly have to be thinking about the next step in the build, right? You can't just be drawing pictures on a flat sheet of paper. You need to be thinking about how that's going to translate for framing it in, how it's going to translate for your plumbing, running your waste and your plumbing supply, how you're going to run your electrical. Electrical is generally pretty straightforward, but you need to be thinking about these kind of things beforehand, right? And one of the major problems that we had thinking about was the plumbing, waste, and vent lines, the vent lines primarily, and the HVAC. Now, the major concern that I have for the vent lines and the HVAC is they usually get run up for a single story home. They get run up into the attic where the vent lines all tie into a main stack, and the main stack runs at the top of your house. And the HVAC has all your ductwork that distributes your air from a central AC system throughout the house. Now, we wanted to be able to add on a second floor to the house at some time, so I wanted to be able to fit all my utilities within the floor joists of the second floor. So a lot of this, when we were talking about floor plans, we were constantly thinking about what things would look like in the future. So I mentioned it briefly. A big thing you need to be thinking about is your joist spans for when you put your second floor on. You know, a 2x12, generally a 16-foot span is about as far as you want to take it. You can go a little bit further if you put them on tighter centers than 16-inch centers, but generally about a 16-inch span. Even better would be able to use all 2x8 floor joists if you could keep them on a 12-foot span or shorter, right? You can go a little bit longer than 12 foot, but once again, you got to keep them on a different or a tighter spacing than 16-inch spacing. So you got to be thinking about all those things while you're doing your floor plan. One of the main things that no one told me that I wish I had known earlier in the plan layout is that if you work with your metal building guys, they can actually move where you put your main columns in your building. So we had designed most of our layouts on the assumption that these were going to be spaced evenly every 20 feet. You can see in our final plan, this bay is actually down to 17 feet, and then we have a longer span in the middle and then a little bit longer span here. And the reason why we did that was to allow us to install 9-foot garage doors as opposed to 8-foot garage doors. To give yourself a gap from the living space to the garage door, and then give yourself a gap from the garage door to the beam, we had to move this over in order to fit 9-foot garage doors. Now, I did have to work quite a bit with the metal building manufacturer about where I was able to fit windows and doors. We had originally thought we were going to be able to put a window, a door, and a window, but we just didn't have the room with the way this main column kind of laid out. So we ended up going with a a door with side lights. So you have a main normal 36-inch door, and then on either side of it you have narrow windows that go up behind the door. So this was kind of our floor plan, where I've highlighted the windows and the doors in blue, and you can see that is the plan for the windows and the doors as they line up on the outside. So the metal building builder will actually install these windows as part of him erecting the building, and it'll be my responsibility to make sure the windows are in the right spot and that they all line up with the rooms in an appropriate fashion. So this is the planned exterior of the house. Once again, everything is on a budget, so we don't get everything we want. We do plan to come back at a later date and add a wraparound porch that comes around here. But for right now, we are not doing that, just to save money. Before I get into kind of the framing plans and the plumbing plans, I wanted to just pop up a picture of the floor plan with some dimensions on it. Give you a chance to pause the video and take a look if that kind of thing interests you. But there was a lot of work that I put into this to try and maximize the use of space. So take a look. If anyone sees anything that's kind of out of whack or kind of weird, let me know, and I'll appreciate anyone's feedback. Well, okay. So we got a floor plan that we liked, and we think to ourselves that we've been planning about framing the whole time, that we know exactly how we're going to frame it. Well, everything kind of changes once you actually try and frame it. Having never framed a whole house from the ground up before, and having at least some working knowledge of this program, I decided that I was going to try and do it in virtual world first, right? So this is kind of my layout for framing. And there's going to be a couple things here that you'll notice. First of all, I think the most obvious thing is that I'm not running floor joists for the second floor this way like I talked about. We actually went in and decided that for running electrical and running plumbing supply and the vent lines for the plumbing waste, it would be better for us to have all of our floor joists for the second floor running in this direction, long ways along the living space of the house. And that allows us to plumb vent lines from one end of the house all the way to the other end of the house through a continuous kind of channel way, and not have to cut a bunch of holes through the floor joists on the second floor. And the reason that's important, I'll show y'all here in a second when we get to the plumbing. But it also allows all the power will be pulled in the house over here, and it allows easy pathway to pull electrical cables. All the water will come into this side of the house here, so easy pathway to pull water lines, and just easy access for running utilities in between the first and second floor if we can make all of these run this way. As opposed to if we'd had them all run this way, we'd have to drill holes through all those joists, and we'd structural integrity, how big of a hole can I drill, how many holes can I drill, all that kind of stuff. So to get around that, we've decided to add these 4 large beams in the living space. And each of these beams is comprised of 5 2x12s that run all the way across. So on this span, which is a little bit less than 15 feet, I looked it up in a span table for a 2x12 that in a 30 foot or 30 pound per square foot live load, a 2x12 is good for 24-inch centers. So I said if it's good for a 2-foot center, if I stack 5 foot together, they should be good for 5 foot or 10-foot spans, excuse me. So none of these spans is longer than 10 feet that this supports. And then we'll run 2x8 joists this way across the entire house is the plan of how we're going to do it now. Have all the headers sized one size bigger than the header span tables recommend, so I've over-engineered that, and I've also made it because I plan on doing all my joists with 2x8s, and I'm going to have a bunch of 2x12s anyway, so I essentially sized everything based off of 2x8s and 2x12s for my headers over doors and windows. Once again, framing in all your doors. looking up in tables, when you need 2 jam studs, how many jam studs you need, cripple placement, and here is essentially my framing plan. Another small detail that I didn't realize until I watched a lot more YouTube videos on it is, and something I want to remind you is, if you're not used to it like me, you need to plan on every corner making sure you have something for sheetrock to screw into along the corner. So every corner of every room, you want to have 2 faces where you can screw sheetrock into. You also want to make sure where your walls tie together, like in a T like here, you have some sort of way for you to tie your walls together. In this instance, right, I have 2 studs here, one on this wall and one on this wall, that I'll use to tie those 2 walls together. And then, based off of this flooring plan, I have no spans in any location that are longer than 12 feet other than across the master bedroom. So when I went to lay out my floor joists, here I just have them color coded for the length that they need to be. So when I go to order lumber, I know how many 2x8 by 12s, how many 2x8 by 8s, how many 2x8 by 10s, and how many 2x8 by 14s. So the only location where I have longer than a 12-foot span, which is what you're good for 16-inch centers with 2x8s, is across this master. So what I did is I decided I'd just double up all these studs here to still allow that you have solid pathways all the way through. So when you see and you look at this, you kind of understand what we were going for by putting those main beams in the living room. Now we have easy access ports to put utilities through without having to drill holes, except maybe if you have to drill a hole once or twice just to jump over between kind of gaps. And then we will subfloor the whole upstairs with 3/4 inch plywood. We're thinking about where our plumbing is going to be. So your plumbing, you're going to have a main drain line, main waste line going out to the septic that everything kind of ties back into. And where is the best place to run that in this house? So I haven't drawn a full-blown 3D one for this floor plan yet, but this is an older one that I drew just to talk to the plumber about. And so we're looking at doing something kind of like this. Now this bathroom has since been mirrored, so you have to put it over onto this wall. But you're essentially, the layout is the same. You have your main drain line coming down through kind of the center of the house. You got your main vent stack, which will come up the front of the house, turn and follow the roof line up and poke out towards the top of the roof, just so you don't smell all that sewer gas here by the front door. And all of your drains for every bathroom sink or everything has a vent line that all runs up and all has to tie back in to some main vent line that ties into this. So everything has to be vented. And if you can make things all run north-south, because my main drain line runs north-south, then if I can make all my vent lines run north-south, it makes it easier to tie all my vent lines into my main stack. So that was a big consideration for why we went with this layout. The last kind of piece of the puzzle is going to be the HVAC. So me and my wife have decided for this house that we are going to go with a 5-zone mini split system. So in the main living room kitchen area, we'll have 2 mini splits that'll be rated to much larger than this space. Then we'll have a mini split in each of the bedrooms and one that kind of works in this bathroom, utility room, closet area. So the mini splits they have a lot of advantages to them. They're significantly cheaper. They're easier to install. I've watched some videos. I believe I can install them myself. All I'll have to run through the floor joists to the second floor will be refrigerant lines. So they'll have a single condenser that they all run to, a condenser compressor that they run to, probably out here. So all I have to run is small lines. I won't have to run any ductwork because the mini splits draw air and then cool it and release it back into the same space. The only thing you have to plan for when you run your mini splits is how you're going to drain, because each unit has a drain for the condensation. So that was why we decided to flip this bathroom. So if I hang a mini split on this wall, I can drain into this drain. I have sinks here and here that I can access for the mini split in the master. I have a sink in the shop on this wall that I can access for mini splits in the living room. And I have obviously the drains in the bathroom for this mini split here. So we have we have easy enough locations to drain the HVAC systems into to hang the mini splits. And that keeps us from having to install an air mover, which takes up room on the second floor, which I'd have to build walls and hide. I'd have to build a utility closet in the upstairs to put that air mover in. We'd have to have taller floors to run anything but like 5-inch vits with 2x8 floor joists. So it really alleviates the how complex installing a central AC system can be. And this is kind of where we are today. So the last thing that I had to do for the builder, who's, like I said, planning on breaking ground and doing the plumbing rough-in next week, is he wanted just a diagram of where all the rough-in locations are going to be. So I made this for him and sent this to the builder yesterday. So this is the locations of where I want all the vents, or the drains to stub up through the slab. And then, so essentially everything above the slab, I'll do myself. So all the vent lines, all the plumbing supply, all the electrical, all the HVAC, all the framing, I believe I can do. Now, I understand that I'm going to run into problems because it's certainly something that I've never done before, but I think I can handle it. I've been growing to believe that you can do anything that you put your mind to, so I'm going to put my mind to this one, and I'm going to make this house the best I can. So that's kind of where we're at today. This is the shape of the house that I hope it to be in about a year and a half from now. The next video should hopefully be me out on site. I'm going to be going out and measuring all the drain placements before they pour the slab. So I'm going to go out and inspect the plumbing rough-in next week, and then hopefully they'll pour the slab and start erecting the building. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time I post a video.